Today's episode of the Everyman series is about parenthood, it's about brotherhood, and it's about pushing through anything. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
A third grader in a single-parent household in Pittsburgh hears a knock on the door. The man at the door tells him and his older brother that you have 5 minutes to put whatever you can fit in a backpack. You're leaving, and you probably aren't going to see your mother ever again. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much to those of you who listen to this show every single day. I appreciate you all so very much for coming in and hanging out, especially in the dog days of June, post-OTAs and mini camp, pre-training camp, this real dead period, where we can do the Everyman series and tell the backstories of all of the new additions to the Minnesota Vikings. Today, we're going over the story of that 8-year-old boy, Jonathan Allen. It's a story you maybe have heard before. It's one that's been told a lot as Allen has bounced from destination to destination, college, and then to Washington in the pros. But if you haven't, I'm going to tell it to you again. And Jonathan Allen has written this story himself in an article he penned for NFL.com himself back in 2021. Jonathan Allen was born into a military family, but his parents got divorced when he was just a toddler. And during the proceedings about custody, his dad was deployed to South Korea and later to Fort Lewis, which is by Tacoma, Washington, and was going to be, kind of all over the world. So mom got custody. At some point, they kind of fell out of touch with their dad, and it was a single mother situation. But it would later be determined that their mother would not be fit for the parentage of these two boys. And the reason for that, the way Jonathan Allen puts it, is mental demons. I'm not going to get into any more details about that. I don't think you need any more details about that. But suffice to say, things were hard. There are a lot of feelings to a situation like that a young boy is not really going to understand. And those feelings are going to get expressed in kind of the only emotion that is socially acceptable for a boy to express, which is anger. It's the only one that boys get encouraged to really go out there and feel. And that is a pretty pervasive societal and cultural issue we should maybe address. But for Jonathan Allen and countless kids like him that have something going on at home that is not good for them, it expresses into an anger issue. Now, this anger issue comes out on the football field in a way that makes him really, really, really good at it. And so football will be a big part of his life. But at this moment, it's not the most important thing going on. Eventually, his mom forbids the two kids from getting to school out of, I'll go with paranoia. And people notice, kids not showing up to school. We got to do a welfare check. Child Protective Services is called. That's where we get to that knock on the door and that instruction to put whatever you can in a backpack. You're out of here. So where's Dad during all of this? At some point, like I said, they had fallen out of touch. Dad is still in the military. And for 10 months, Jonathan and his older brother, Richard, much older brother, like 7 years older, Richard Jr., his father's Richard Sr. So Jonathan and his brother are in foster home to foster home shelters, the system, as he likes to call it. The system is pretty uncompromising. So when you've lost custody of your children, even though it seemed to be, the circumstances around that were a lot different. You weren't in the country, there was a military thing, way different circumstances, and different things have come to light since. To regain custody of your kids is a really, really hard thing to do. So this will get wrapped up in the courts for a year. It is a big, giant blacklight on, I think, one of the more underreported but most harmful parts of our system. And one that's not in the news a lot because other stuff is these days, but one that hurts a lot of kids nonetheless. During this time, Jonathan leans very hard on his older brother. His older brother that knows a little bit more about what's going on. And this is a third grade. This kid's 8 or 9 years old. Richard's in high school. Richard can help his little brother through things, protect him, help explain things to him. He knows what's going on and how to survive in a very unforgiving and uncompromising world. But eventually, the two will get separated. As sometimes happens in the foster world, somebody can take one kid but not the other kid, and suddenly they are separated, and there's no way to know where one or the other is. Getting lost in this system, you might as well be lost in the depths of the ocean. However, Richard Sr. comes through. Or I apologize, Richard II is dad. Richard III is the brother, but dad comes through. He will finally win the court case, regain custody of the children. As Jonathan Allen tells it, they run out of the building and grab onto their father like they're in the middle of a hurricane. And it's the only thing stopping them from blowing away. It is a tearful reunion. And they have, at least as of college, they had not found their mother. I don't know if they have since. I don't really need to know. It's kind of none of my business. I sort of hope that there has been some kind of reconciliation. I think that would be nice. But for now, you are now part of a military family. Richard II is a nuclear biological chemist in the Army. But he is an Army guy, right? Even if you're not a rank and file infantryman, you're an Army guy. And that means you play by Army rules. This gives Jonathan Allen the sort of NFL work ethic that every single one of these people has. And for Richard II, football is very much second to grades. And his rule was, you better have straight A's. If you have straight A's, you can play football. But if you don't have straight A's, that means that you can't handle another thing. You got to get your grades up before you play football. For Richard III, he never got straight A's, so he never really played football as a serious thing. Would end up going into the Army himself. For Jonathan, he did get those straight A's. He played football, and he excelled at it. Another part of this was, again, all of that work ethic. It was pretty clearly important to Jonathan, and it was good for him as an outlet for that emotion that a boy doesn't really figure out how to deal with until they're older, unless you have a sport to channel it into. And then suddenly the target of the rage was whoever lined up across from him, and it was okay to hit the heck out of that guy. There are a couple of great stories about this, about doing, like push-ups and sit-ups to a ridiculous degree. It sounds like something you would see in like One Punch Man. If you found Jonathan Allen potentially running around the block in Virginia where they would move after all the foster home stuff, he ran around the block. The deal was, you're going to go out and you're going to mow the lawn. You're going to do one stripe of the lawn, and then you turn the mower off, you go run around the block. And you come back, you do another stripe of the lawn, and then you go run around the block. And it would end up being like 400 laps around the block. This ridiculously grueling thing that you just cannot fathom, like, assigning to somebody these days. It's a little bit of a relic of a forgotten age, these sorts of ridiculous. It's like that scene from Remember the Titans. But that instills in him, not only does that make him, physically for his age just this incredible kid that can very easily play with all of his brother's friends and keep up with his brother's friends, even though they're way older than him. It also instills that military work ethic that we've talked about before on this series. That'll take him into high school, where there and college, he figures out what it means to be part of a team, and not always in the most fun way. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Monarch Money. If you've ever gone to your bank account and wondered what happened, oh no, what happened? Look, it's easy for things to get away from you between ordering out with food, between going out and doing stuff on the weekends, entertainment, if you're doing travel. It's super easy to lose track of your money. That is where Monarch Money comes in. It's your own personal CFO, and it gives you full visibility and control over your finances. But it's more than just a budgeting app. You're not just organizing your expenses. It does help you do that, track your spending, see where you can cut back, but it's also a complete financial command center. So you can stop just managing money and start building wealth. You can get insights on your investments. You can consolidate a whole bunch of financial apps into a one-stop shop for all of your financial needs. And you can manage money with a partner. They're super easy collaboration. So if you're the kind of person that has a joint account with a partner, you can set set goals. You can track all of your shared personal accounts and stay on the same page. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for half off of your first year. It's the middle of freshman year when the Allen family will move to Virginia and bring Jonathan Allen to Stonebridge High, which, unbeknownst to his dad, is a huge football high school in that area of Virginia. It's like a destination high school. It's absolutely the kind of program you'd want to put your kid in if you're trying to get your kid to a premier college football program and he's a stud athlete. They didn't know this at all. It just happened to be where they moved to. Very funny stroke of luck. And one of those things you can't help but think about, like, what would have happened if they decided to move 2 districts over and ended up at some like podunk high school that nobody was looking at? Would this be a different story? Would he have been JUCO? Would we be talking about some dude getting drafted out of an NAIA program, right? But no, we're at Stonebridge High. And he shows up right away as a kid that had never been in a 3-point stance before, had never really done too much official stuff. Of course, with, dad kind of keeping him away from sports and focusing him on education. Education is the very first thing. That was always the very, very important point that his dad made. And then he steps on the football field. And as it always goes with guys that are eventually going to be NFL athletes, among, kids who are freshmen, it doesn't take long to realize that he's going to be pretty good. And everybody loves him at Stonebridge High. He's this like nice kid that everybody loves talking to, but just don't get in his way on the football field, right? Once you're on the football field, that dude is the monster in the closet that you're going to be scared of. But, nicest kid ever. But that rage will still pop off sometimes. Sometimes, temper. But for the most part, he keeps it pointed the right direction. And at times, I think this experience even helps him to help other people through some of the similar problems. There's this story about the Stonebridge High losing a game on like a controversial ref call. And one of the other players is like chasing down the ref after the game as all the kids are going to line up and like shake hands and stuff. One of these other kids goes off to go like, I don't know, go find the ref and go get himself in trouble. And Jonathan Allen like grabs him and is like, shut up and get in line. You do not do that. As it is, football becomes the place where he learns how to deal with rage healthily, how to be a person. And, I like the way somebody put it once, honor that emotion, but not succumb to it. He will start on the edge. He'll actually play on the edge pretty much all of high school, not in the middle where he is now. He'll be on the edge. And a lot of the college recruiting people are going to sort of shy away from him because they think he's too big to be an edge. Like, we got to move him inside, maybe bulk him up more, teach him a new position. And they're a little bit kind of iffy about that. In particular, Virginia Tech is iffy about that. which is a sort of blow to his ego because Stonebridge is like a feeder program to Virginia Tech. They've had tons of kids go to Virginia Tech and become starters. So the coach at Stonebridge is like, dude, when have I steered you wrong? I've given you so many of your starters. This is the best kid I've ever coached. Okay. I've ton of D1 players. This is the best kid I've ever coached. Why aren't you bringing him? And they're like, tween your size. So recruiting is a little bit weird. Some schools are a little bit less interested, and we'll get back to the recruiting thing. But I do want to tell you one anecdote about his last game at Stonebridge High. It's the 5A Virginia State Championship game. And the defense does its job and gets off the field, giving the offense a chance to tie the game. It's 14-21. And the defense gets off the field, and the offense driving in opposing territory and going for what would be the game time touchdown to make this state championship work with Jonathan Allen as a senior. And even in on that offensive drive sometimes. They would put number 93 out there and he would block sometimes. He would also play running back sometimes. I mean, he's just when you're such a hyper athlete like that, even if you're not the right, as we think of NFL players as such specialized builds, right? You'd never put Jonathan Allen at running back because you want somebody faster at running back and more agile at running back. But in the high school level, when you're just that much more athletic than everybody else, you can kind of play anything. He played a little quarterback, like screw it, do whatever you want. They pull Jonathan Allen off the field for a different personnel package. They hand the ball off. He gets TFL'd, ball punched out, peanut punch, and it's the other team's ball, and the game ends there. It's heartbreaking, and it's especially devastating because Jonathan Allen couldn't do anything about it. He stands helpless on the sideline. And if you contrast that with his life experience, he watched his dad, who is the greatest inspiration to him, the hero of heroes to him, the person that shaped and molded Jonathan Allen into who he is today. And he watched that man take on the custody system of the United States Child Protective Services. You may as well throw a rock at a tank and win. You have to think, man, I can accomplish anything I set my mind to. And then to be stuck on the sideline and not be able to do that, you got to think, man, if I were just on that field, right? That frustration will motivate him. But more than motivate, it's just going to stick with him for the rest of his life. As I'm sure many of you have experienced if you ever had a devastating loss in a high school sport. But behind the scenes of all of this is the college recruiting thing. So Richard Allen II doesn't really see football as this important thing, right? Education, until it becomes clear that football can lead to education, that he's got his causality backwards. Suddenly, when Boston College, which is the first team to offer, tells Jonathan Allen, we're going to give you a full scholarship to play football, suddenly it's, this is real. Let's do this. Let's really attack this football thing with everything we got because it can get you a free education. And that's so insanely valuable, right? So that's when things get a lot more serious for Jonathan Allen. The workouts, the training, the just dedication to his craft. He will be not literally committed, but pretty locked in on Virginia for a while until he gets a call from Bama. Virginia Tech will eventually actually get in on this, but way too late for it to not be insulting. So Alabama is the interesting one, right? I mean, it's freaking Bama. It's Bama in 2013. I mean, this is like peak Nick Saban Bama, right? He will get along really well with the strength coach. He'll get along really well with Nick Saban himself. So these visits, there's like a chemistry, there's a vibe to it that he really likes. And so he will commit to go play at the University of Alabama. But the whole I'm part of a team and I can't control everything is going to come back to bite him a few times throughout the rest of his career, leading all the way to the Vikings. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. A lot of freshman college players will lose weight over their first training camp. They either show up out of shape and they just kind of, slim down and get into shape, or it's just a little more cardio than they're used to, so they don't really keep that same bulk. It's something that people will actually kind of recruit for and say, yeah, he's about 10 pounds heavier than this position is perfect for, but by his first camp, he's going to be down. So they kind of think about it this way. Jonathan Allen doesn't lose the weight because he has been working out that hard already. So this is nothing new to him, and his body is already tuned into exactly what it's going to be. So because he's going to lose weight and he's playing on the edge, they think they're going to put him at linebacker, like an off-ball linebacker. And they try that, but he does not slim down, and he will stay on the defensive line, eventually kick to the inside. Eventually they say, man, you're actually just huge. You're going to kick inside. He'll actually play there as a true freshman, but he's a rotational player because it's Alabama. Of course you're a rotational player. You see the other guys. Jaron Reed is on that team. Ashawn Robinson is on that team. He spends most of his college career playing next to Deron Payne. And then later, like Quinnen Williams joins the party. Like there's names on names on names on names. Just in the inside there, that defensive line it's Bama, right? So there's a lot of mouths to feed, and he doesn't really get that sort of go-to guy. Nobody gets to be the dude at Bama because everybody's the dude at Bama. Well, so it's his junior year, and he once again is sitting on the sideline while everything he worked so hard for that year comes down to it in the national championship game. These back-to-back, you might remember these if you're a college football fan, back-to-back national championships with Alabama and Clemson. This is the first one of those. But once again, the game comes down to Alabama has the ball, driving and needing to score to win. But this time, the guy that they back up and hand it off to is Derrick freaking Henry, because this is Alabama. And we can trust Derrick Henry a little better than we can trust like whatever random dude got the ball back in the Stonebridge state championship game. No, this is the Natty. This is Derrick Henry, and he's going to plow in for a goal line touchdown that'll end up sealing things. That could have been the last game of Jonathan Allen's college career. He very much was considering going out for the draft, calling it quits on college football, and moving on to the next level. But he's told okay, you're going to be like a first or second rounder, right? You're a starter, you're Bama, you're a good player. But he's got a shoulder problem. He has labrum surgery. And after labrum surgery, they tell him, actually, you're probably going to be more like a third rounder. And that's enough for him to say, you know what? Let me play out my fourth year of college and see if I can, put in another good year of work, prove myself a little more, and also maybe be a little bit healthier this time around. That turns out to be a phenomenal decision. He absolutely explodes that year. First round pedigree, all kinds of draft hype, and another trip to the national championship game. This time, it comes down to Clemson on offense and Alabama on defense, meaning Jonathan Allen is on the field and can actually do something about this. There's 2 seconds left in the game. Some of you might know where I'm headed with this. It's Deshaun Watson throwing to Hunter Renfrow on the goal line away from Jonathan Allen. So even though he's on the field, he doesn't fully have control of this. And when you're part of a team, there's only so much you can do. Really, this is a story about controlling what you can control. And the disappointment about what you can't control, because Hunter Renfrow will catch that pass and Clemson will beat him in the national championship. So at both levels of football, high school and college, Jonathan Allen has spent his last play helplessly watching as his teammates let him down in a championship game. But we move on. It's time for the draft. And shoulder tendonitis is still messing with his draft stock, but not nearly as much. So he will be a first rounder. If you remember, he was kind of supposed to go top 5 in that. Like he was supposed to be a blue chip dude in that draft, but the shoulder tendonitis ends up being more of a factor than everybody thinks. And he falls all the way to 17th, where a befuddled Jay Gruden and Dan Snyder are like, oh my God, this guy's on the board. Slam it. Now, remember, he spent a long time in Virginia, formative years in Virginia. So DC, I mean, Washington's like his hometown team. He's stoked about it. And he'll build a community there. Once he gets drafted, he gets his extension, he gets his money. He starts working with a homeless shelter for youth called Sasha Bruce Youth Work, which focuses on homeless youth, on, kids in the foster care system, kids who went through what he went through. This is his way to give back to exactly the kids that were in his position, not only in, by volunteering a lot of his resources for that, but also by saying, hey, there is at least one person that cares about you, and I've stood where you stood, and I know what it feels like to not think anybody cares about you, because once I was alone, they took my brother away, and it didn't feel like there was anybody. Well, guess what? There's at least one, and it's me. And by the way, I'm the star defensive tackle of the Washington Commanders. That is the impact that only somebody like him, like very uniquely, can have. And I think that is super awesome, and it's beautiful. Another awesome and beautiful thing about this time is that he spends almost his entire pro career next to Daron Payne, who he also played next to at Alabama. And of course, the two are brothers. They play football. You do not play football next to somebody for 11 years and not basically be brothers with the guy. They call him the Alabama Wall, which is a phrase that would age very funnily. But on the field, playing for Washington is not the same as playing for Alabama. Until last year, Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen would not experience a winning season. The best season they had was an 8-8-1 campaign, and the only time they made the playoffs was in 2020. A 7-9 Taylor Heineke-led Washington football team, is what they were called that year, would sneak in as the king of a terrible NFC East and lose in the playoffs. That participation COVID year thing was like the best year that they would have. That frustration will build. It motivates. And there's only so much that those two guys can do about it when you're cycling through god-awful quarterbacks and weird offensive coordinator coaching situations and scandal after scandal that's hitting Washington. That's of course going to be, everybody reads the headlines about whatever Dan Snyder's up to now. But it's actually in the year after the COVID year where the frustrations kind of boil over, where they were supposed to be better, take the next step, right? You won the division. Can you become better? It's all wide open. It's all in front of you, and it totally isn't. They're on a 3-game losing streak in the middle of this year. There's injuries. COVID stuff is like decimating the roster that year. And the disappointment of not realizing the potential that you kind of proved you had in 2020. Sunday Night Football. Late in the season, they are 6-8 in a do-or-die matchup in Dallas with all the world watching, and it's going horribly. They will lose this game 56-14. At some point during that on the sideline, frustrations boil over. Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen are caught dead to rights on camera in 120 frames per second. Jonathan Allen throws a punch at Daron Payne. This sucks because if you Google right now, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, you won't get any of the fun stories about their friendship, about their time in Alabama. Stories of these two warriors in the middle going at it for each other week in and week out. No, you're just going to get a million quotes about this one moment that kind of boiled over on the sideline and then both guys immediately moved on from. But it's a pretty funny video, I have to admit. Daron Payne just sticks a finger right in his face, like just pokes him and like pushes him with his face. And Jonathan Allen, without skipping a beat, cold clocks him. That was it. Guys will separate them. Cooler heads prevail. Everybody cools down. They're both asked about this afterwards, and they're like, what? We're brothers. You don't fight your brothers? Brothers fight. Get over it. Like, they're both like, this was nothing. Get over it. But it can never be nothing in the 24-hour hyper-analyzed media landscape that we live in. And so it's a thing that's just going to follow them forever. The rage of it all. But to me, that's not Jonathan Allen's story. Jonathan Allen's story with regard to rage is about a kid who learned how to process his feelings and channel it into something positive and do a lot of positive things with his life, not to mention become a Pro Bowl NFL defensive tackle. That's kind of an accomplishment. Jonathan Allen is a very successful human being. I don't think I'm out on any limbs by saying that. So 2024 is the first winning season that either of these guys' experiences. And it really adds a layer to that. I mean, if you're a Commanders fan and you've just like been through so many scandals and so many futile seasons, you hadn't seen a winning season and even longer than that, and to finally see them experience some success, I mean, you got to be over the moon right now, right? If there's any Commanders fans watching right now, for Jonathan Allen, it holds that special place. However, he'll tear his pec and he's going to miss a bunch of this success. But it also kind of colors the decision to come back way earlier than he should have, right? Way earlier than is reasonable at all to do so, and actually play pretty well in that Lions playoff game. To me, that is a culmination of just the kind of human that his father has molded and sculpted, that football has molded and sculpted. I think Jonathan Allen is the quintessential, the platonic ideal of a football player, where football can help you get through so many of those things that will destroy other kids. But if you have football, that can be what you need. And now, not only can he find his own success through that, but he can give that back to his community and other kids who are in the same situation that now have that much more help thanks to football. It's one of the reasons I love this sport so much, even understanding how barbaric and dangerous that it is, because it undeniably has an incredibly positive impact on so many young people. You can't deny it. You could say maybe it's not worth it with like CTE and the impacts that you have later in life. You can make that argument, but you cannot deny that it helps a whole bunch of kids figure out how to grow up, no matter what they are going through. That is beautiful, and Jonathan Allen is a great example of it. I will talk to you all tomorrow. And as always, Skol.